Well, ladies and gentlemen, friends, thanks for joining us here down to chat. As you know, my name is Garrett Perkins, the host here, and I'm here today with our friend Emily Freeman. Quick rap sheet on Emily because she is wildly successful, but what I love about Emily in the brief time that we've talked with her, and just Emily, your content in general, is you have a lot of accolades and success, but I imagine the things that you treasure the most have quite little to do with those things. But I still want to honor that in general. Emily is the host of the Next Right Thing podcast, which is in connection to one of her books because she is also a New York Times bestselling author of several books. Her most recent book that we're going to talk about today, How to Walk into a Room. We have The Next Right Thing is another book, and also a book called Simply Tuesday. And she's a writer, a podcaster, and a longtime voice for women in transition to help women navigate different busy seasons of life. Some of the phrases that I've heard, whether they're coined by you or not, you're known for, and you talk a lot about is blessing the hellos and goodbyes and giving people permission to listen to their own life as well. And you are also our contributor to a brand partner of ours, Mom Agenda, and their Dear Busy Mom series. So we're really thankful that you're here today. Emily, thanks for joining us. It means a ton.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here.
Love it. Well, you say that now. We'll see how you feel in a couple minutes after we're having a conversation. But Emily, let's start real quickly with walk us through kind of the journey for you from wife, mom, individual to businesswoman, co-founder, running a business to writer, author. If I would have asked you 15 years ago, 20 years ago maybe, hey, you're going to be a New York Times bestselling author, would you be like, well, yeah, duh, of course, Garrett. Maybe walk us through that journey of how you ended or landed where you are today a little bit.
Can you even imagine
Yeah.
that I'd be like, yeah, that's what's happening. Just you wait. Just you wait. Yeah, no, I mean, 20 years ago, I had 1-year-old twins walking around. I couldn't have imagined tomorrow, much less 20 years from now.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's these life is funny, right? Like I went to school to be a sign language interpreter, which I did do for several years after graduation and into my early years of marriage. And that's what I kind of thought I would do. I thought I would work in the school system, interpreting for high school students, college students, I did that for a while. But then, when we had the twins, I ended up, I was grateful. I worked a little bit while they were little, but I was able to mostly stay home for their early years. But while I was home, that was kind of when I started writing. And I'll tell you, I'm one of those people who wrote a lot in journals growing up,
Yeah.
but it was sort of like, I never, ever, ever had ambitions to be a writer as a job. That's for unicorn magic people. Like I just didn't have any idea what that would look like. So, and I didn't even have hopes for it necessarily. But when I had toddlers at home, and then our son came 2.5 years later, so we had 3 in diapers, 3 cribs. It was a whole
So 3
situation.
kids under 5?
Three,
3
three kids
kids.
under 3. Yeah.
Emily,
I listen, I know when you say I have 21, and 19, you're like, "Oh, that's great." But then
yeah,
when you say I had 2, 2 and 0, that's when you're like, "Oh, where's your crown? Because we need to bestow it upon your head."
more than a crown, yes. A lot of jewels in it, that's for sure.
I don't were we crazy or were we genius? Cuz
A little.
now, I mean now like they're going off and we're like, "Oh, they're all gone kind of at the same time,"
Yeah,
which is kind of great,
yeah.
honestly. So, all that to say, I started writing when I had tiny children at home on a blog. Remember those
Oh yeah.
back in the day?
You mean
Um,
Substack? Same thing?
Right. Listen, that is what like Substack. It's like it's a newsletter. It's blogging, you guys.
Yeah.
It's blogging. It's great. I love it. But I started writing really because it was a form of expression, all things. But really, I just wanted a place to put my thoughts
Yeah.
that they wouldn't go anywhere. Like it was just like, let me just have one little tiny place. So I was blogging. Nobody read my blog. I didn't even know people could read it. I kind of thought it was like my own. I mean, I know they could, but I didn't think they would.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that sort of morphed over time into like, oh, I really enjoy writing. What if I were to intentionally learn more about it? So I went to a writing conference and, one thing leads to another. And now I'm writing a book proposal for my very first book. That was back in 2011. And so since then, I've had books come out, there's been 6 since that first book in
Yeah.
2011. And kind of you do the next right thing and you kind of like, this makes sense right now.
Yep.
But, I knew one step at a time, but I never could have imagined, 10 steps ahead at that time.
Yeah. Wow. I'm the fact that you had 3 under 3 as well.
You're still there. You
I
haven't gotten over it.
don't know. I'm still.
Me neither.
I
I
haven't
know.
listened to anything since then. Yeah. 4 kids from 12 to 3, and I'm like, golly, we had 3 under. I think we had 3 under 6, and I was like, who are we? Why are so?
What are we doing?
Yeah, you're a champion. You're a champion. Okay, that's amazing. Your most recent book release was How to Walk into a Room. That is an interesting title. I immediately, when I saw the title, when our friends over at Harper One introduced us to you and that title, I like looked at the synopsis, and when I read the synopsis, I was like, that is not what I thought this book was going to be about.
Yeah, right,
So how did you come about writing? I guess why did you write How to Walk into a Room, and why that title?
Yeah. No, I had a reader tell me their 9-year-old saw the book on the coffee table and was like, "Mom, why do we need a whole book about? I can do it right now. Watch." And she like leaves the room, comes back in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, she's not wrong. She's might be smarter than all of us. I will tell you, I started a podcast in 2017 called The Next Right Thing.
Yep.
And it was all about decision making, simple practices. I wanted it to be short form, single voice narrative, 10 to 15 minutes, so people could listen on their way to the grocery store, and that was that. Like, they didn't have to like download it and listen to me talk for an hour and a half. And it was really just every week I wanted just a small little tip or story that would encourage people to just do the next right thing.
Yeah.
And that making decisions, small decisions, big decisions. Then we ended up having a book and a journal that came out. In talking with people after that book and people who are podcast listeners, I realized there's also like there's like the daily decisions we make, kind of like just do the next right thing.
Yeah.
But there's also these like bigger moments in life that are like, is it time for me to quit my job?
Yeah.
Is it time for me to switch my vocational direction?
Yeah.
Is it time for us to move overseas?
Yeah.
What about this relationship I've been in for a while? Is this something that's actually serving me, or do I need to let it go? What about this faith community I've been a part of? 2020 and after has been a point of a lot of people finding themselves in various rooms that maybe they were born into. Maybe, and when I say room, I mean a relationship, a group, a commitment, an ideology, a belief system that maybe you were born into, you've been here the whole time and it fits great. But sometimes, and for a lot of us, it was, 2020, 2021, but not everyone, but where we begin to look around the rooms of our lives and we think, either I've changed in this room and everything else has stayed the same, or everything around me is different than it was when I got here.
Yep.
But how do I discern if it's time for me to stay and maybe make a change where I'm at, or if it's time for me to walk away? And what does it look like? How do we even begin to know?
Yep.
And so those were some of the questions that I was asking in my own life. And I also was in a lot of conversation with readers and listeners who were asking that in their lives. So I did an episode. It was about a 10-minute episode called How to Walk Out of a Room.
Yeah.
And it was one of our most downloaded, listened to episode we heard the most feedback about. And I realized I had a lot more than 10 minutes worth of content to say about it.
There was a need, right?
There was a need. And people were like, oh yeah, how do you walk out of a room? So to speak to the title went back to school in 2017 and got my master's in spiritual formation and leadership. And one of the things that I said to my friends when they asked me, how's school going? You've been in, it wasn't seminary, it's graduate school, but it was for a faith-based thing. And they asked like, well, what are you learning? And I was like, well, one of the things I'm learning is I'm learning how to walk into a room as myself, not as I think I should be, not further along than I think I ought to be, not as the person who people expect me to be, but just like I'm here as a learner, I'm here as a beginner, and I'm walking into a room, kind of a new room, a scary room in some ways, but it was an exciting room too. So sort of these two concepts of walking out of spaces that no longer fit and walking into a place that maybe is new, but also might fit me better, or I'm learning. That concept was sort of helped me frame up metaphorically this idea of what do we do when a room that we've been in is no longer a room where we belong.
Yeah, well, you nailed it with 2020 and just the reality of everyone having to reassess where, like, not just where do I land, but where do I want to dwell? Where do I want to dwell, whether it be in a faith community or even in a workspace with just the political climate, COVID, all the above, of remote work versus what type of culture to just what a perfect time to release content that says that. I want want to ask another question that actually has less to do with how to walk in a room and more to do with authorship, because so many of the organizations and groups that we work with at Givington's we call them content brands. And really it can be an author, it can be a big nonprofit, it can be whoever that their thought leadership, their ideas is really their product, for lack of a better word. Whether they're monetizing it or using it for mission-minded reasons. You mentioned, you talked about your podcast, and I think that is a really clear example of the value of knowing your audience. I mean, the fact that you were able to find your next book idea from simply just testing that.
Yeah.
Of like, hey, I have an idea that I have 10 minutes of thoughts on, and realizing, wow, there's a lot more here than I realized. How do you utilize your audience and your community to help navigate, all right, where do I go next? Where do I go next? How do I serve these people more? How do you utilize your content and your kind of ecosystem to serve your audience more?
It's an excellent question. I think it's one that probably content creators, authors, creatives don't ask enough.
Yes.
Two things come to mind. One is, I remember Beth Moore, who maybe a lot of people know who she is. She's a Bible teacher, speaker, beloved, national treasure. But I heard her once say that a book is always a last resort. And she said, if I have a new idea, I start it as a tweet. This is back when Twitter was named Twitter. She's like, I start it as a tweet. If it gets traction, if I have more to say, then maybe I'll make a blog post. If I have more to say after that, maybe I'll do a 3-part series. Then maybe I'll make it a retreat. And like the very last, the caboose on that train is a book. Because it's too hard, it takes too long, it's too much work for that to be the first thing. And so often I hear, I used to work with writers a lot and sometimes still do, and I hear people say, I want to write a book. What advice do you have for me? And I always say, how do you know it's a book?
Yeah.
And do you know the difference between writing and publishing?
Yes.
Because writing is an art and publishing is a business. And I think we get into a lot of trouble when we conflate those two things and we're like, I have this thing of my heart, so therefore it is a book. And I want to say there are so many steps between the thing of your heart and a book on the shelf.
Yep.
And there are so many other ways that that thing in your heart might want to express itself. It might want to be a live event. It might want to be a product, like we don't know. So that's one thing that comes to mind. The second thing, though, to maybe a little bit more on the nose to your question, is I survey my audience regularly. So we have an annual survey that we send out, and we comb through the responses. Like we read every response, and we get thousands of responses. So I do have someone who helps me with that, because sometimes I don't want to read all the some of the more negative.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to read it, but it doesn't have to be me. Right. But it's really helpful because we try to ask, and bless the readers who fill that out. It's long. We don't just like, here's 10 questions. We're like, no, we're going to sit down with me because I want to hear what you have to say. But it's always really helpful. It always kind of helps shape. I'm never going to like just do what people want, but I'm looking for that like concentric circle of what makes me come alive? What am I about? Also, what is the felt need right now? And where do they cross over? That's where we want to live.
You said that's something that we live and die by at Givington's with the brands that we work with is so often people chase the product of, I want it to be a book. I want it to be this instead of, hey, what is the felt need? Actually, especially in the content space, the nonfiction, even in business, consulting, all the above, what's the problem you're solving? What's the felt need?
That's right.
And
what is the gift and packaging is often how I think about it, because a lot of times people are like, I want to write a book, but I want to say that is the package.
Yeah.
But what if your gift is this big and you just bought a huge gift bag, which is a book? So we don't really know yet. First, we've got to know what is that, like you said, the felt need, what is the message, what is the thing, and then we'll decide what's the best way to package it later.
Yeah, we call that the medium, right? What is the best avenue for this content? We've seen so much more success with a lot of our content creators that we work with. Of, hey, they want to write this book. Like, hey, what Beth Moore did, this might be a 3-part video series that's so much better.
So much better.
Way more traction. That gets way more publicity.
And so much easier. Listen.
Yeah, we won't tell our publishing friends, which they know. It's true. It just takes forever.
Well, but see, listen, this is a great example. I tried to write a book on decision making in 2016, and it was terrible. Like my publisher was like, that's so cute what you're doing, but you can keep trying or just stop because this is not it. And guess what I did? I was like, well, it's not a book, but I'm going to start a podcast. And I started the Next Right Thing podcast because this book idea that I thought was a book idea. That's all I knew. I'm an author. I write books.
Yes.
But it started like, well, it wants to be spoken. It wants to be said. But guess what happened is the podcast went 6 months into it. My editor calls me up and she's like, hey, so you know the first 30 episodes of your podcast is your next book, right?
Yes.
And I'm like, no, I did not know that.
Yeah.
So it ended up being a book anyway. So Givington's, there you go.
There you go.
It always comes back around.
That's right. No, well, and we love that though. Like again,
Yeah.
we totally agree with that Beth Moore beautiful idea of test it. Let, at its most crass, let the internet decide. You don't need to
Right.
decide. You don't know what's best, and that's okay. You know
Yeah.
who does? Your audience.
That's
And we attest to, Seth Godin in his book This Is Marketing calls it the smallest viable audience, which we
Yeah.
love. And instead of chasing the Barnes and Noble shelves, just chase the people that want to talk to you. And what
That's
ends up
right.
happening is you go from 10 to 30 to 80 to 2,000 to now where you're at when you've been writing for 10, 15 years and have multiple books. So I think you are a wonderful example of doing it, and not the right way. There's not a right way, but I think doing it in a way that blends. I love that picture, what you said, of writing and publishing. Publishing is a business. It's really clear that it's a business, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes writing and content doesn't necessarily need to be published, but it does need to be expressed.
That's right.
And there are plenty of different mediums that you can do that. All right, let's get back to your book real fast. How to Walk Into a Room, because I do think there's a lot there when it comes to the big transitions in life. And I think for readers and for anyone, what I love is it speaks to a wide swath of people. Do you have an example in your life that there was a room that you needed to walk out of? And what was that experience like? And what do readers need to know? Or maybe someone that's going, man, I like that idea, but what does that look like? Maybe give an example from you in your life. Like, this is the room that I needed to walk out of. Or vice versa. This is the room that I needed to walk into and did walk into. And here's the fruit that came from that.
Yeah, there's a lot of examples. One that comes to mind, speaking of walking into a room, is when I was deciding whether or not to go to school as a grown-up person. And it's one of those things where, like, and this is the thing about decisions, is it's easy to make a decision between one good thing and one bad thing.
But when it's two good things.
When it's two good things or when it's two bad things, that's where we get into trouble, right? And so for this, it was two good things. It was, life is okay, great. I'm doing this. I'm doing work. I don't have to get this particular degree in order to do my work.
Yep.
It's not like I want to be an accountant, so I have to go to math school. Like, it wasn't like that. It was a little bit more that required some discernment, some conversation. And, thankfully I had a partner, my husband, John, who was like, go for it. It's great. And I'm like, you are no help. I almost wish he would have said, absolutely not. We're not doing this.
Or you have to, but yeah.
Or you have to.
Yeah.
It would have been so much easier. So I think that decision-making discernment process was one of those things where it's like, well, and you mentioned Seth Godin, and something that he has said that has helped me a lot in my own life is art is doing things even though they might not work. And I think that's true, not just in art, but in everything.
Yes.
It's like part of being a person is trying things and taking small risk, even though it might not work. And so going to school for me, going to grad school, spending the money, spending the time, was like, I don't really know what this room is going to bring, but I can't shake the tap on my shoulder that I keep sensing, in prayer, in conversation, in just driving around, it just was on my mind. And I think those kinds of things are important things to pay attention to. And sometimes we dismiss them too easily because we can't write on paper, these are the 3 reasons why I'm making this decision. That way I can defend it to everyone. And we would much rather make decisions that way. But I went ahead and said yes. I walked into this room, 2 years, I got my degree. I'm telling you, Garrett, right now, the day I graduated, I still couldn't tell you, here are the reasons why.
Yeah.
This is what this degree has gotten me. Now, I could give you a lot of benefits and a lot of things that room brought me. But what I didn't know, this was like right around graduation. One of my professors in that program sat me down for lunch and said, hey, we're making some changes in the program. Anyway, long story short, they offered me like sort of a contract job that they wanted me to come back and help teach in that master's program twice a year just for the residencies.
Yeah.
I never would have been offered that had I not done the schooling,
Yep.
because I wouldn't have been prepared for it. I wouldn't have been equipped for it.
Or qualified.
I wouldn't have would have been qualified. It was too nichey. Like, they wouldn't have known of me.
Yep.
And I've been doing that for 5 years.
Oh,
but
wow.
again, I didn't go to school to get that job.
Yeah.
But if I hadn't gone to school, I wouldn't have the blessing of this job. And so that's like one of those examples of listening to your life, of not dismissing when something just kind of keeps coming back around,
Yeah.
and trusting that, you know what, I'm not going to miss my own future. Like I am a person who makes good decisions, and when it's between two good things, maybe you just can't go wrong. Because I don't know, if I had said no to that, I'm sure there would have been wonderful gifts on the other side, too. Like there would have been other things.
Yep.
And so that's one example of walking into a room. I had no idea what was ahead, but I'm really glad I did.
Yeah, I love that. I think my wife and I say all the time, a lot of times the issue with making decisions and the two good things and the two bad things, it's a framing issue. What I mean by that is what you described with what Seth Godin said of, sometimes art doesn't need to work for it to still be art. And I think it's even that quote in itself. Well, how are we defining work?
How do you define success? Right, exactly.
Exactly. So many people, they've defined success already based off of not even what they want, but what culture has told them is success,
Right.
which is really clearly a lie a lot of times. I think it's much easier to trust the people in your intimate circle. So I just love that picture of, man, what are we defining as these things, which is always fascinating. I think in my own life, just personally, I think one of the things that you talk about, that thing on your shoulder, my wife for years was, on her shoulder was foster care and adoption, foster care and adoption, foster care and adoption. It was just not in my frame. And I knew that she got excited about it, but it was just one of those, we're having kids and biologically, and one of those areas for me of, she was like, hey, I don't want to do this unless you're in it with me. And it was this interesting balance of, I would have never done this. Never. I would have never even thought about doing something like this until you brought it up, and figuring it out together as a partnership of deciding what that looks like. And looking back, I ended up making the decision that I don't know if I want to do this. But there also is, with good and bad decisions, especially when partners are involved and communities involved, there's also a piece of sacrifice with decisions as well. I can make a decision that I don't want to make that also still benefits me in the long run when it comes to gifts, because I would have never met my fourth child if it wasn't because of this. And there's the greatest decision that I never wanted to make, which is an interesting framing there of no, I was wrong and my spouse was right, and now we get to kind of move towards this, which was really cool. That has nothing to do with anything that we're talking about in books, but man, I love your frame of reference on that. Emily, what I appreciate most about you, as I've learned about you and looked at your content in general, the way you write about things builds on itself. I think the fact that, the Next Right Thing podcast was about decision making, and moving into How to Walk in a Room still was about decision making, but a broader scope on decision making. You've done such a good job of developing not just your voice, but your content in a way that builds on itself. It makes sense to read The Next Right Thing, and then after that you read How to Walk into a Room. It doesn't, so often I feel like authors, content creators they write based on what they think people want. Or what culture says, or I'm going to write a book on strategy, and the next time I'm going to write a book on forgiveness, and those don't necessarily work with each other a lot of times. Would you walk me through what is your decision-making process of, man, what is the next book for me? What does that look like for you?
I mean, it could be my fatal flaw. I mean, you say it's a compliment, but it also is in my mind, everything's always connected.
Yeah, amen. Come on.
Everything's connected.
Yes.
And so to me, I don't know any other way to do it. It's just hey, fish, tell me about that water. That's kind of how it is a little bit.
Uh-huh.
But I will tell you this, I have noticed as I've written the books I've written, and even if you go back to my 2011 book, that I would never write that book now, especially not in the way I wrote it. However, that book did have seeds of the book that came after. I mean, every book has had either a chapter that was named what my next book was.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I did not plan that clearly, but that's just, that's been maybe 3 books in a row. I had a chapter called What the Next Book Became. Or at least a section, which is wild. Looking back, it's oh wow, that's been there. Okay.
Yeah.
And so for me, I don't know any other way to do things than to have them connect and hold hands with each other.
Yeah.
But that's because that's just the way that I see the world.
Yeah, we could talk about that all day long, about the way you see the world when it comes to the worldview of that, which I 100% agree. But I also, the way you do it, I believe, is best, because it gives you as the content creator the ability to be free to connect the dots between your products which I don't even like calling them that because it's your voice, it's your story, but it is. At the end of the day, on the publishing side of the house,
Yeah.
there are products where all of a sudden it is so free for you to connect one piece of your content to another. It's a fluid content strategy that actually moves through a funnel. If we're going to put corporate jargon to it, but you are very good at that, and I'm not just saying that to make you feel good. You have a gift for that, and it's clear that you just naturally do it. Like you just said, like I don't know how I would do it any other way, and I think that's why a big part of why you've been successful, and you're just also an unbelievable writer as well. So, last question for you around how to walk into a room. Who were you picturing when you wrote it? Like who were you picturing that grabbed that book and needed that book? Obviously, you're writing it a little bit for yourself probably, but as well, you are writing it for an audience. I mean, you probably have an archetype in your mind of that person, but who did you have in mind when you wrote How to Walk in a Room?
Yeah. Well, you said it well. I mean, I think in many ways I wrote it for a younger version of myself.
Yeah.
Probably a lot of books that people write, that's who we're writing to, is a
Yeah.
younger version of ourselves who had a big decision to make. And I think more broadly, when I wrote, I imagined anyone standing in a threshold between what they know and what they don't yet know.
Yeah.
Anyone who is concerned, worried, asking themselves the question, should I stay or should I go? What if I stay and nothing changes? What if I leave and everything falls apart?
Yeah.
These are the questions that we ask ourselves when we are standing in beloved rooms of family or community,
Yeah.
or rooms that we prayed really hard about for many, many years, rooms that we went to school for, things that we spent money for. These are tables that we dreamed of being invited to sit at. This is a place that someone else would kill to be here.
Yeah.
And who am I to even question? So really, I wrote the book for anyone who was asking themselves those types of questions, standing between two spaces, maybe even not two rooms, but a room and a hallway. Like, I don't even know, I'm going to be in this liminal space, and to give some kind of framework to help them make the decision with some confidence, and to help them to learn, what does it mean for me to listen to my life, to listen to the voice of God, to listen to the voice of my community, and to trust it, and to know that, wow, what if I could trust myself, not to the exclusion of everyone else, but what if I could trust myself too?
Yeah.
And know that maybe moving forward with this next thing is actually best, not just for me, but for everyone around me.
Yeah, which is, it feels like saying no is always bad, right? It's always bad, and especially when it's, like you said, beloved rooms, which is so good. Emily, thank you so much for the time. It means a ton that you'd spend time with us at Givington's. We are massive fans of you. We have individuals on our staff that consume your content, love your podcast. When I told our team that you're one of our next guests, multiple of them, can I meet her? Can I meet her? So you do an unbelievable job of disarming people with your writing style, with your voice in general, and it's really clear that there's an authenticity that you bring to the table that is much needed in a lot of the conversations that you're having with your audience, and we love to get to watch it from afar, and then when we get small moments to get to connect with the content creator like yourself on that side. You can go get any of Emily's books wherever books are sold, Amazon or any other retailer as well, to support her work. Also, you can go check out her podcast, The Next Right Thing, and all the other things she is doing as well. Emily, thanks so much for the time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.